Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I'm Rachel Ann. This is Marianne, and we are here with a very special guest that we'll introduce in just a moment. And we are all so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey. Welcome back
Yes.
to episode 60 of the
60!
podcast.
Y'all know what time it is. Okay, which reaction are we gonna do? I'm feeling balloony. Let's do balloons.
Yeah, 60th episode. Yay!
Yay!
And very special guest today. We have a return guest, Dana. Welcome back to the
Yes.
podcast.
Yes,
Thank you.
Dana. We'll
Thank
do
you for
party hats
having
for Dana.
Thank you for having me. This is so celebratory.
Yeah, I know. We're just very, very happy and positive at the Connected Wellness Podcast. We really like to celebrate all of the things, no
We
matter how
believe
big or
that
small.
everything is worth celebrating, right? Like
Absolutely.
life is hard, like
Absolutely.
we're going to talk about today. It's very stressful. So
Yep.
anything good, small, big, in between, we should celebrate. Yes.
Absolutely. We will. We will indeed celebrate. So this is the wonderful Dana. I'm going to introduce her in a moment, but before we go into the full introduction of who the wonderful Dana is, we usually do something called our wellness wins. And so, Marianne, Dana, feeling like you want to share a wellness win?
I can start for us. Yeah, we don't want to put Dana on the spot here. Okay.
I do. I'm evil.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So my wellness win just happened like a couple hours ago. It was
Yeah.
wonderful. I was able to like all of the stars aligned. My husband and I both had the afternoon off. The weather
Mm,
is gorgeous here in Pittsburgh, which is very
mm,
necessary because it had been really yucky for a long time. And we were like, okay, we have a few hours. Like, what can we do to take advantage of this lovely time? So we went to the botanic garden. We took a beautiful walk in nature. It was like all
ah,
of the things in one. We got to have some movement. We got to enjoy nature. We got to enjoy each other. And it was just a lovely, lovely couple hours. So I'm feeling very well thanks to that time that we spent outside together.
yes. Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
lovely. Man, botanical garden. What a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful way to recognize God's beauty
Hmm.
and just
Yeah.
breathe.
We got a membership. Highly recommend. Yeah. So now anytime we have time, we're like, let's go. Let's go to the botanic garden. So
I love that.
lovely. Yeah.
Amazing. Dana, you feeling ready or would you like to stall a little bit more?
Well, I have two, so I was trying to, decide between them, but
Oh, snap.
yeah,
I
maybe
don't
in
know. I'm kind
a
of nosy. I want to know both.
okay. Well, like in alignment with Marianne, I also went outside for a walk on the way to go lift for at the gym. And
Mm,
it's a beautiful day, like no clouds in the sky. So
Mm.
imagine like just blue sky day. Everything is super green because it's like prime springtime and like tons of birds chirping everywhere. And it just feels
Hmm.
like super, all the somatic things, which is very relevant, but all of the things just like felt really good going to the gym and then moving my body and then yeah, walking back. That was really awesome. And then the second thing
wow.
is that I'm going to a women's basketball game tonight. I love the WNBA. I specifically love our home team, Seattle Storm, and I love cheering them on. And it's just the hype is on another level. And so I really,
Nice.
I love it.
That's
And
Ah,
awesome.
that's
it's a
amazing.
happy
I love
place.
that.
So.
Okay, go Seattle Storm. Are they having a winning season, a non-winning season?
It's early in the season, so
Oh, okay.
yet to be determined, but newish kind of roster. So we're just
Oh,
excited. Yeah, but really
okay,
great
cool.
players. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Well, we're cheering you on, Seattle Storm. You got this. My wellness win is that this past weekend, I hosted my very first in-person event. And that was really, really
Nice.
exciting and terrifying and nerve-wracking and stressful and awesome. And so it was really cool. We had a processing space called Commune in Color, and we colored and we journaled and we prayed together and did all these mindfulness things. And it was really beautiful, and I had a really great time, and I cried, and God is so good. So That is my wellness win. Doing things that honestly I never really thought I would do. Never
Yeah,
ever ever thought, but here we are. So, yay,
that's
wellness
awesome.
wins.
Going out of
I
your
love
comfort
that.
zone. Yeah. Do you think you're gonna do more?
Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
That was a really confident yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Apparently I feel very
Yeah.
strongly about that. Yeah.
Series,
That's
let's go.
great.
Yeah, okay. Oh, dang. Okay. I don't know if I'm signing up for a whole series. But let's see what we can make happen. I'll say that. Yay, wellness wins.
Yeah. Yay,
Good job,
wellness ones.
team. Alrighty, friends. We're gonna hop into today's topic. Today's topic is about somatic care, kind of part two, because last time Dana was here, Dana spoke about
Hmm.
that. But Marion and I, we were thinking that our last episode, it was good, but it was like heavy. We know that it may have been challenging for some of y'all, it may have been empowering for some of y'all. Talking about justice and caring about justice,
Hmm.
especially if it's the first time you're really thinking about it, it's really intense. And so at the Connected Wellness Podcast, we believe in being real, as we shared. And part of that is what do we do with all of the emotions and thoughts and feelings, maybe for the first time that we're feeling, especially about things like justice. And that's when we thought of the wonderful Dana, who is so many wonderful things that I'll go into just a second. And one of those things is just really great at sharing somatic care practices. How do we care for our mind, our bodies, and our souls? So we asked Dana to come on and she said yes. And so we are so grateful. Dana is a lot of wonderful things, like I mentioned, but I will read her official bio. Dana is a psychotherapist, a coach, an organizational consultant, a workshop facilitator, and a podcast host. The podcast is called Untethered to Rooted. We'll link it down below. She is trauma informed and culturally sensitive in her mental health profession, and she is trained in somatic attachment therapy, and she's clinically certified in anxiety, depression, ADHD, and trauma. There's nothing she cannot do. She founded Untethered to Rooted to help individuals and organizations examine how intersecting identities impact interpersonal relationships, heal from workplace and societal trauma, and find their footing in leadership and belonging. She is also one of my closest friends in the entire universe, and I can't believe that we get to breathe the same air. So that is the incredible Dana. Dana, we are so happy that you're here. Thank you for wanting to hang out with us again, you know?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on here again.
Yeah, girl, absolutely. Um, so we're gonna hop right in.
Hop.
And last time we hopped right in and we hopped in deep, y'all. So we're just gonna do that again, but slow and gentle care, okay? Um, One thing that we've been thinking a lot about, and we would really love to hear your perspective, Dana, is how our minds and our bodies respond to our environments.
Mm.
I forgot what episode it was, but we talked about how even the way that we organize our individual spaces, how we listen to music on the subway and in our commute, how that can make such a difference in our overall wellness. We
Hmm.
would love to hear from you. What happens in our bodies when we are experiencing or witnessing the injustice that's going on? What's going on in our bodies as we're taking all of that in?
Okay, let's hop to it.
Girl,
I was
I
gonna,
warned you.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, so first, I think I'll take a step back a little bit about like when we are in just our regular environments, we probably have routines, we have anchors, we have things that we're used to day to day, right? So, like,
Mm,
we have a certain flow to our day to day that's sort of like maybe up and down, maybe sometimes an unexpected like event might happen, like some interaction that wasn't like the best or something like that, right?
mm,
So, when our nervous system experiences something in our like regular day to day, we have something that's like a window of tolerance, is what it's called. It
mm.
was the term was coined by Dr. Dan Siegel. He's a therapist, he's a psychologist, and it's called the window of tolerance or the optimal zone. And in your window of tolerance, you're able to handle stressors that come day to day in your life, day to day, week to week. And that's a zone or the window where you're able to manage, you're able to cope. But also stress and trauma can kind of throw that off balance.
Hmm.
So what happens is that in what you're talking about, when injustices happen, right, we can start to get thrown off balance because it's also not part of our everyday norm necessarily.
Hmm.
So when it starts happening once in a while, you start to get dysregulated. So you might become agitated or angry or uncomfortable or revved up. And sometimes in
Hmm.
your nervous system, you might be in like a more hyper arousal state, is what we call it. So your window of tolerance is here, right? And then you kind of have this like up and down that happens every day, and you handle these events, and your nervous system gets revved up a little bit, but then you're able to like cope. But if there's like a big event that happens, sometimes it can knock you out of that window of tolerance and you go above it. So it's like
Hmm.
out into hyper arousal. And we call that kind of fight or flight, if you're familiar with those terms.
Hmm.
Um, and so you can get what we call dysregulated, but fight or flight, and then also get kind of really overwhelmed. In the extreme, you get extremely anxious, maybe even panicked, and maybe overwhelmed and feeling like things are out of control. So that
Hmm.
can happen with like one big event, or um, to what you were saying in your question of injustices, that can happen with several repeated events over and over that are kind of chronic in your environment, right? So it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be just one event. It can be like several events that happen that knock you out of this zone and then make you feel like you're in a state of panic, like things are out of control and overwhelming.
Hmm.
And what can also happen is that you're in this state for so long that like your nervous system can't stay in hyper arousal and that state of fight or flight for a long time. It can't necessarily like sustain that. So what
Hmm.
happens is it can dip below your window of tolerance down here,
Hmm.
into hypoarousal or into like more of a freeze state. So you
Hmm.
can start to feel pretty sluggish or feel like you're losing track of time or spacey or feeling like you're
Hmm.
dissociating because it feels overwhelming and you start to feel
Hmm.
numb or zoned out, right? So
Hmm.
just kind of want to like give you the whole picture of like you have this window of tolerance, everybody's is different. And then any kind of event or multiple events, depending on the like the chronic nature of those events can kick you
Hmm.
out of that zone, um, and kind of make you feel like not yourself and not able to
Hmm.
cope and handle it. So the through line is that it's so overwhelming that it just feels like you can't manage or cope or handle the stress well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, you don't stay there necessarily in your
Hmm.
one window of tolerance. The beautiful thing is that healing work, and I say healing work in general because it can be therapy, it can be healing circles, it can be work with a coach, it can be like faith in your faith community, right? A bunch of different healing work can help expand your window of tolerance, right? And can
Hmm.
help kind of reaffirm that you can cope, that you can respond, that you can deal with the stressors that are going on with you. So that's
Hmm.
Hmm.
like the very kind of short of like the window of tolerance and your nervous system and dysregulation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Questions about that? I know that's kind of a concept I draw on.
Yeah, no, that I loved your visual. So I hope if anyone is just listening and not watching, I
Yeah.
recommend you at least watch that part on YouTube because that
Yeah.
visual
Yeah.
is great. I'd love to like make a little, graph of that. But
I have an image actually. I can send it your
oh,
way
if
if
you
it's
don't mind
helpful.
sharing, yeah, that would be awesome because that's
Yes.
super, super helpful. What I think is so interesting about what you said is that like because I totally feel that being stuck in this hyper arousal. That's like that sympathetic state, right? Like high
Yeah.
cortisol, feeling like hyper aroused. Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything is like,
Hmm.
setting you off. Um and I do feel that sometimes that numbness that you drop all the way down in the other direction, but
Yeah.
my problem is I'm almost always up in this hyper arousal state. And sometimes
Hmm.
you feel like you need the drop, right, to just like give yourself a little bit of a breath. So I know
Hmm.
this is the whole point of the healing work, but like
Yeah.
I'd love some tips of like, so, and we hear this is such a trendy wellness phrase, is regulating your nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I almost want to think regulating your nervous system is something that it does naturally, right? That naturally
Mm-hmm.
we have high stress and we have the sympathetic response, and then we go back, parasympathetic, and we have this nice natural thing. But like you're
Yeah.
saying, if we have this chronic stress, we stay in that hyper arousal. So what can we do to bring ourselves down a little bit back into the window?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, yes. So you're absolutely right. There is a natural thing that happens where you like, if you're set off, you can flow kind of back, right? And your parasympathetic response to sympathetic. I heard you using those terms, so I'm going to kind of use them as well. Um, but there are like in the work that I do, and even in some of the workshops that I facilitate, we talk about somatic like micro practices or things that are
Hmm.
really accessible that you can kind of do on your own and practice. So
Mm.
I can share some of those today if that's
Hmm.
helpful.
Yes.
Love
Um,
that. Yeah.
we call one of them, so I have the one that I talk about, if you're feeling just like a little too overwhelmed, a little too revved up, and dysregulated, we call this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mm.
And Rachel, you're nodding your head. So this one's probably familiar to you, but
Mhm.
in somatic practices, you really want to focus on how do you connect in with your body? How do you ground
Mm.
yourself in the present moment? And really check in and identify like where is your nervous system at right now? And you want to
Mm.
use that. You want to use sensation words to be able to do that. Like, and what I mean by sensation words is like, does it feel prickly? Does it feel cold? Like, what does your body feel? Right?
Mm.
So first, what I do is I invite people, and everything's an invitation, right? So you have choice, which is really helpful in a trauma-informed way to like people have choice to be able to do this. And we do an exercise where you take a breath, you ground in the present moment by taking note of where your nervous system is at first. Um, and really seeing like, ooh, do I notice like do my legs feel kind of fuzzy? Is my back hurting a little bit? Like, what do I notice? Maybe I feel like I have like my shoulders are kind of to my ears. Maybe I don't know how long they've been to my ears all day, but maybe they have been.
Mm.
And then what we want to do is have you focus on the present moment, take in a breath, slowly hold and let it out, and then name 5 things that you can see around you in your
Mm.
current space. And then name 4 things that you can touch. And like think of textural things. So like this mic is pretty textural. This water next to me is wet. My flowers are soft. Right. And then 3 things that you can hear around you. 2 things that you can smell. And then 1 thing that you can taste. So you
Mm.
really are bringing in all of your senses, seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, and what you can taste, to really intentionally bring your nervous system into like the now and to really kind of activate that parasympathetic calming response.
Mhm.
Mm.
So that is one exercise that we do. Another exercise, like my micro practice kind of somatic exercise we do is something called the container exercise. So that's like if you are like
Mm.
really outside, like you're like, I am about to have like a panic attack.
Mm.
And usually like this has been done in like different therapeutic maybe modalities like EMDR, if you're familiar with eye movement desensitization regulation. Um, you have to make sure that that's right, but EMDR, um,
Reprocessing.
reprocessing, thank you. Um, I was like, regulation? That's what we're trying to do. Um, and also in like somatic attachment therapy, we also talk
Mm.
about like containers. And the thing is kind of thinking about like what's a container where you can temporarily put all the rushing thoughts and feelings that you're feeling in the present moment, like think of a container that's like temporarily going to hold all of that distressing stuff.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then you want to kind of ask like what does the container look like? It might be different for each person, right? Like what's the
Mm.
container that you bring to mind? What locks it or guards it so you don't have to be the person who's thinking about like okay, like what happens if I'm like in a meeting and it just all comes out. Like you can have rest assured in your mind as you're doing this exercise that like there's someone or something that is locking or guarding it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you send all the distressing images, sensations, and thoughts there. You lock and secure it, and then you place it somewhere to access at a later point when you're not feeling so overwhelmed. Right. So it's not that you're like trying to lock away all your feelings and avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is temporarily contain it, and then when you are in a different moment where you're not in hyperarousal, like you said, Marianne, you're like, I'm in a hyperarousal most of the time. Well, sometimes you might feel like you are able to cope and handle the
Mm-hmm.
day. Maybe that's the time to like go back to the container and take a look at things. Like what
Mm-hmm.
was I thinking about? Like what was really distressing to me? To go back and really kind of process it then or think about
Mm-hmm.
taking it bit by bit at a time. So container exercise, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, if you're in a hypoarousal state
That's
where
a
you're
low
feeling
one.
like,
Mm.
yeah, that's the low one where you're feeling like numbed out, dissociating in really a freeze state. If you're familiar with, there's fight or flight, but then there's also freeze. So if you're more in a
Mm-hmm.
freeze state, then there's a theater exercise that we used to do in high school that I sort of like teach people. And it's a somatic exercise that's pretty fun. And we do something called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we shake our left hand or arm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then a right arm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, your left leg, and then your right leg, and then we count down all the way to one. And at the end, we like let out a big scream, and it's like one thing that kind of helps pump you up a little bit. You just need a little activation to be able to
Mm.
bring you back if you're feeling like very sluggish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So those are some examples of some like somatic practices that I teach or review with different people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really helpful. As you were talking about the hypo just now,
Yeah.
something that I hear a lot, and I think I experience this quite a bit as well, in regards to advocating for justice and also just like in daily life and things outside of injustice, is I get so overwhelmed with choices and options that I
Mm,
go into that like freeze state and I'm like
mm,
I can't move. There's so many ways to go about this. There's too many choices. I don't know what it is. And so
mm,
something that I'm wondering how do I want to say this? Is there a way that we can build a radar when our nervous system goes like in a hyper or hypo so
mm,
that we know that and we recognize that as opposed to just getting used to the hyper or the hypo? Because something
Mm-hmm.
else that
mm,
I hear a lot is like, "Oh, I'm just so used to the injustice that's happening. I'm just numb to it. There's no point in me doing something about it." Or there's people that's like, this is too stressful. I don't even want to deal with it. I don't acknowledge it. There's too many things going on. How is my one action going to do anything? So there's this sense of overwhelm and just getting used to the feeling as opposed to understanding and healthfully tuning into what's happening. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think maybe I want to make sure I'm understanding you right. I feel like I'm hearing actually more than one question. So,
Probably.
like, I think one thing I'm hearing is like, are people like, how do people sort of make sure that they are actually tuned into what's happening and
Mm-hmm.
then in the world? And then, second, how do people make sure that they're tuning into themselves and their reaction to what's happening to the world? Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, one thing is in terms of like reaction to the world, I also practice like acceptance and commitment therapy. That's like one thing that's like a type of
Mm.
modality of therapy. And one of the things we kind of talk about in like ACT is really kind of understanding like what limiting your information diet. Um,
Mm.
and limiting like sometimes it's not like ignoring what's happening to you, but it's like recognizing it's taking into account like where you're at, but also like recognizing that like there might be a breaking point for you. And it
Mm,
might be different for different people, right? And it's important to like recognize, what is going on around you, but it doesn't have to look in a certain way. Like it doesn't have to be watching videos of injustice to understand the
mm,
injustice necessarily. It can
mm,
be like reading what happens instead of watching it. It can
mhm,
be listening to like different people, and hearing, you know, what they say about it, like on a podcast, for example, or their own perspective. It can be having conversations with people, right? So you don't have to necessarily take in information only in this like sensationalist way that the news portrays it. Yeah,
mm,
which is like sometimes I think some people get really stuck and they're like, this is the only way that I can take in information. And so they're
mm.
like, I'm gonna just be stuck watching the news, right? But
Yeah.
there's so many other ways to understand, educate, and
Mhm.
learn about what's going on and feel like you're responding to it instead of like ignoring what's happening.
Mm,
And maybe we can put a pin in that and talk about that more because I think it's important to talk about like how do we respond to injustices.
mhm,
Um, I think the other thing is kind of thinking about what I said, how it impacts you individually. So
mm,
I think it's really important to note, and I don't think I said it in these exercises explicitly, but one thing is to take a pause. Sometimes you need a break or a pause to recognize and intentionally reflect on where your nervous system is at.
mm,
So you might need to pause and ask yourself, like, am I in a hyper arousal state right now? Am I in a hyper aroused state? Or am I feeling numb? Like, how am I doing right now? And so that might be like
mm,
a check-in with yourself to
mm,
just check in and be like how am I doing? And you may not have an answer emotionally about how I'm doing. You might be like, I don't know, which might be a signal for you to be like, huh, if I don't actually know, like
mm,
mentally or psychologically or emotionally, like how to describe how I'm doing, what does my body feel like?
mm,
Right? So that's where the somatic piece comes in with your body and be like, well, like it feels kind of tense. And like maybe note where the tension is in your body. And then maybe you might reflect a little bit more and you might say like, it's kind of like the tension almost feels like when I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm reading a whole bunch of like Instagram posts over and over again and I'm like kind of
mm,
stuck in this scrolling way and I kind of do the same thing, right? But that
mm,
takes like some conscious intentional reflection to do that.
Mhm.
That takes a pause to be able to do that. So I guess what I'm saying like for yourself as you're reflecting, you might need to take some intentional time to pause and reflect on where you are at. Where's your mind and where's your body and
mm,
like and your soul and how
mm,
it's like responding to the injustices.
mm,
That's making me think back to the window of tolerance. How
Yeah.
um how will I know that I am out of the window of tolerance? Or maybe on the flip side of that, what does it feel like? What does it look like when everything is where it's supposed to be, where I'm just in the window, up and down, normal up and down, right? Because we have normal stressors in our life. So yeah, maybe let's stick with that. What does it feel like to
Mhm.
be in this healthy, regulated state?
mm,
Yeah. I have a really good example of this. So, I was recently speaking to someone, and they were like, I had a really, really stressful day and a really stressful week, and everything was happening like work stuff, relationship stuff, like family stuff. All of that was happening all during that entire week. And they're like, I had to like kind of extend beyond myself during that week because it was so stressful. But you know what? Like, I didn't crash out. Like, I actually felt like I could manage things. I asked people for help.
mm,
I asked for support.
mm,
I utilized like some different like coping tools. I was able to like call a friend. I was able to um take a pause or break for like 20 minutes and go for a walk and then come back, and then like re-tackle the like problem I was having at work, right?
Mm,
So, when I heard this friend speaking about this, I was like, oh, you are actually able to cope because you are engaging in your coping skills, even though this was probably like one of the hardest weeks for you. You didn't get so overwhelmed that you weren't able to like function the next day necessarily. Um, and and I should be careful with that word because even if you are able to function, it like you can also be in a hyperarousal state, right? So that's not
mm-hmm,
exactly the measure, but they were able to like reach out for support and recognize that they needed help as well.
mm,
So I think that's the other piece to this. I think
mm,
that one thing is, yes, there are somatic practices that you can do for yourself, but the other piece to this, especially as it relates to injustices in the world, is this like communal aspect, right? Like we also
mm,
need like communal support. We need communal care. And so that's why I always like, even the work that I do with people, I'm always asking, like, do you have a supportive person or do you have supportive friends in your life?
mm,
Because yes, you could utilize all these different coping tools, but if you don't have supportive people in your life to be able to just like help you recognize, reflect back to you, like, hey, I think you might need to take a break, or like whatever it is,
mm,
or like, hey, here's what I'm noticing. Like, how are you actually doing? Or having people like
mm-hmm,
care and support you in that way, then like it doesn't, yeah, it's like it doesn't really matter if you have all the coping tools if you don't have other people to help you like sustain using those coping tools as well. Like,
Hmm.
and people
mm,
need people, like we need each other, right? So we need that like communal care and support as well. And then if
mm,
you're like dealing with, injustice in the world. So I don't think Rachel necessarily mentioned this specifically in my bio, but like one aspect of the work that I do is like I'm a therapist for community organizers and activists, right? So oftentimes they are met with being the
wow.
leaders who are like dealing with regular injustice on the front lines often,
Hmm.
and it can feel really isolating to be on the front lines of the injustices that they like are witnessing and experiencing.
Right.
Mm,
And one thing that's really important is thinking about like, well, it's not just you, like it's not just you that is trying to like make this better. It's like you as a part of a whole, and thinking about like being part of a network of people who are all like all of your actions together are what's helpful as opposed to just the
mm,
actions that you do, while also recognizing just the actions you do are actually significant, right? Like
mm,
they have an exponential effect, right? Your sphere of influence, if you've heard of that term, right? You influence maybe like the closest 10 people that are around you, whether it's like family or friends, right? So your actions do matter, but also you think about your actions in hand with other people's actions as well as you are like
Hmm.
mm,
working to like change systems. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm. Wow. It's making me think about relieving the pressure to have that savior complex
Mm.
and like allowing people in your life and in your sphere of influence and empowering them to do justice while you're
Mhm.
also doing it as well.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
Something that I'm thinking about is the term, I don't know if it's community healing or communal healing, but
Okay.
or both, but
Yeah.
that's a term that I've heard a lot. I would love to hear from you, especially because you are talking about like we're healing in community and the power of community and all of those things.
Yeah.
Is community slash communal healing at all related to justice, at all
Yeah.
related to somatic practices? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, big question. Yeah, I mean, community care, right, is kind of what helps sustain us in the work.
Mm,
right? That's what helps it not feel like you're just doing it alone by
Hmm.
yourself.
mm,
So communal care is really reflective of like our shared responsibility, the mutual care that we give to like take care of each other. Um,
mm,
and so that is like super important when you're talking about like how do you sustain maybe responding to system injustices. Um, how do you sustain being able to continually do that as
mm,
a community as opposed to like even just as an individual, right?
mm,
Um, Communal healing is slightly different in that when you have an injustice that occurs, right? Pain, hurt, rupture that happens, like what does it look like to, is repair even possible? Um,
mm,
and what does repair look like? Where is their accountability, right? You might hear a lot of these like big words when it comes to when there is hurt or pain or injustice committed. People are asking, like, who's going to keep this person accountable? Like,
mm-hmm,
who is like, and if people aren't keeping this person accountable, like, whose responsibility is it to keep this person or this system or this organization accountable?
mm-hmm,
Um, so accountability is really huge when it comes to like the healing process.
mm,
Because it's also about like taking responsibility, taking ownership for the wrong or hurt or pain that you have caused, right? If
mm,
you're the person who caused the hurt or the pain.
Hmm.
So that's sort of like how, like, those are all kind of connected with each other, community healing with like injustice. Um,
mm,
and there's a lot of different models out there around like mediation in community. Um, and yeah, like different ways of repairing ruptures that happen as well. So,
mm.
yeah, those are kind of like big things there with communal healing. I forgot the last part of your question, but you said something else too.
Me too, but what you said was really great. Marion is one who keeps time. Can I ask one more question or are we
Yeah.
okay? I will go fast. While you were saying that, something came to my mind about like spiritual bypassing.
Oh,
Like in my mind just goes in all different types of places apparently. Because a lot of the times in community when we're receiving support from each other, when injustices are happening and we're like seeking comfort in community settings, spiritual bypassing is like one of the most common things that people experience if they're in any type of spiritual setting. And I wonder, like, what is the role of like spiritual bypassing in all of
yeah,
this, especially from, again, the somatic perspective? Like, is
yeah,
there like a feeling that's associated with it? Like, does it like shut down our bodies?
yeah.
What is that?
So are your listeners familiar with the term spiritual bypassing, or should
I don't
we
know.
define it?
Would you like to
Um,
define it, Dana?
I mean, so spiritual bypassing, let's see, in layman's terms, I guess it's kind of like using spiritual ideas to avoid facing difficult emotions, is sort of how I think
Mm,
about it, right? So if there's something challenging or if there's like difficult emotions, sometimes people feel uncomfortable and then they'll use platitudes, like things that are like, oh, this person's in a better place, or things that
mm,
help kind of make them feel better about the situation as opposed to what the actual person needs in the moment, right? And so what actually ends up happening is that there's avoidance instead of attending to and acknowledging the hurt. And
mm,
how this really relates to somatic exercises and practices is that somatic practices actually ask you to attend to yourself. You attend to
mm,
your nervous system. You acknowledge what's going on.
mm,
Um, and you recognize the, like with the container exercise, you're like, I'm about to crash out. I need to like put these, just, I need to recognize that I'm about to do that. And I'm going to put all these images and sensations and all these things I'm feeling that are flooding my system. and I'm going to put them in a place temporarily, right? So there is an acknowledgement. It's not an avoidance. It is an acknowledgement that that's happening to you, right?
Mm,
Avoidance is a little bit different where it's like, this isn't happening. Like, I don't know, that's for them to figure out. Or like, those are the types of like sentiments some people make when they are talking about um, avoidance as it relates to like things that arise.
mm,
And it becomes, I think I lost my train of thought, but hopefully that made sense.
mm-hmm,
Um, I want to answer the thing that you were talking about specifically with spiritual bypassing, though. So, with spiritual bypassing, some people use phrases to avoid what's kind of wrong or the wrong that's happening, the injustice that's
mm,
happening, or the challenging thing that's happening, or to avoid the difficult emotions. And instead of spiritually bypassing, what is maybe more useful is attending to and acknowledging like this is wrong and there's a lot of pain and hurt that's being caused, right? um there's a lot. I can see that this is really impacting you and this is impacting me, and if I'm honest, I actually don't even know how to respond to this. That is a
mm,
more like honest way of responding to an injustice rather than saying like I don't know what to do, so like that's for other people to figure out and I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
go through with my life.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. That was really helpful, Dana. You shared a lot of really great techniques, and also I think you helped to connect the dots of how multifaceted injustice really is at a
Mm,
macro level, a micro level, at a communal level, at an individual level, at a systemic level, and the different ways that people and peoples are impacted by that.
mm.
um, I know that this is like a lot of what you do, and I'm curious if there's ways for people to reach out to you, like if they want to
Yeah.
connect with you to learn more, or even like attend a workshop or anything that you're hosting. How can people reach
Yeah.
out to you?
Yeah, so people can reach out to me either through my website, which is untetheredtorooted.com, or danadarty.com. Both of those will go to the same website. And you can contact me for a call. And you can also connect with me on Instagram, on Untethered to Rooted, to find out about like different events that are coming up. I usually post it in my stories. And if you're interested in like having me host a workshop or something, or doing a teaching for your organization or your church or
Mm.
something like that, yeah, untetheredtorooted.com is a good place to reach out.
Cool. I appreciate it, Dana. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here. We'll make sure to drop those links below, and we love hearing from y'all. So please let us know what are the things that's been coming up for you. We know that the last episode was a lot. This episode could be quite a bit as well. So wherever you are in your journey, we would love to hear about what's coming to your mind, your heart, your soul. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us on Instagram. You can find us there at Connected Wellness Podcast. You can also email us at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to Marianne specifically, you can find her on Instagram at Wabasaba. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at Real with Rachel Ann, and we're on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast. Thank you so much, Dana, for connecting a lot of dots that a lot of us have been wondering how they're connected, but we know that they are, but we don't know the words. Um, Maybe we should do a part three. I don't know. Just saying.
I'd be open to it. Yeah. But thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you, Dana. I'll pass it over to Marianne.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much, Dana. And this was a great episode 60. I feel like a big takeaway for me is that we need to be honest with ourselves
Mm,
about how we feel, right? Like that's like
Mm,
kind of step one. And I want to do some exploring of like how to kind of take these intentional pauses and see how things are really going, right? Because it's so easy
mm,
to just like do, and not let yourself feel what you need to feel. So yeah, thanks
Mm.
for bringing that to my attention. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody, and hopefully you will be well until next time. Thank you.
Yes, be well, everybody. Bye.